All right, well, thank you for attending this session today. Today we're going to be talking about how some conventional sales tactics aren't as popular and as, you know, the adoption isn't as high as some of the modern sales techniques that, Apttus is using today. And with a great pleasure, Steve Sanders from LinkedIn is going to talk about how LinkedIn is adopting Apttus to go for a more modern sales tactic approach. So Steve is part of the enterprise account management team at LinkedIn. So Steve, please step up.
Excellent, thanks Clark. Is anyone here from Cisco Systems? All right, I'll start with a little story. About 15 years ago, early in my sales career, I was calling into Cisco, and after about 35 calls into their head of learning and development, I finally got a meeting. I used the fact that my CEO would be in town, picked him up at the airport, we went down to Cisco. If you've ever been to Cisco, a bunch of buildings, walked into building A, got in there, sat down, waited in the lobby for an hour and a half. Really impressed my CEO with that. Finally got in for about 30 minutes, met with the head of learning and development at that time, had about 37 really great questions to ask him. Asked him all my questions, got finished with that. I think we probably did a demo. It was a SaaS product, early SaaS product at the time. Walked out of that meeting feeling pretty good, pretty high. Met with the head, senior vice president of learning development, had my CEO, had got all this information about their business, felt like I could solve their problems. I never heard from him again. To make it even worse, when my CEO came back to me about 2 months later and said, hey, how did that meeting go? What was our next steps? I had to explain that actually an incumbent had sold business in there over those 2 months since we had met with the head of learning and development. That did not make me feel very good. So my job now, leading one of our enterprise account management teams, is to help my reps not do the exact same thing I did back then. I was following what I would call the conventional sales tactics. These are the tactics that we learned many years ago. I started my career at Oracle in the 90s. Call high, go as high as you can. Figure out the best discovery questions you have. Or should they be closed? No. Should they be open? Yes. And if you can't get a hold of that person, just keep hitting them again and again and again and again. I'm sure all of you have either seen this activity or most likely been the wrong end of this activity. Why do I say it's the wrong end of that activity? Let's first look at this notion of calling high. CEB would tell us now that there's 6.8 decision makers in every single B2B sale. More importantly, 58% of those deals, 58% of those sales happen outside the C-suite. So outside the senior executives, they've all been moving to the line of business. So while you're calling high, your competition's calling low. Second, 77% of buyers believe that sales reps are underprepared. So what happened in my Cisco environment? I went in and asked a whole bunch of questions about his business. How do you think that came across to him? Like an interrogation. It wasn't, I understand your business and I'm trying to solve it. It was, tell me everything about your business and then maybe I'll try to solve it. And that hurt me as a sales professional in the eyes of that VP. And lastly, the fact is that most executives are tired of being bombarded by reps. I recently read Tony Hughes' posting. Tony is an expert in sales methodology, runs a lot of sales camps, and he was commenting on someone who actually pinged a CEO every day for 52 days. What do you think it did to that individual's credibility? He actually got the meeting, so I give him credit for that. but what do you think it did to his credibility that he had that much time? It's not a scalable solution. It's not the way that we can go to market. So if you think about this conventional wisdom, in the reality of today, in the reality of those insights that I just shared with you in my own experience, that there's complex buying committees, that there's heightened buyer expectations, and lastly, you're just gonna end up annoying someone at the end of the day because those tactics don't deliver anymore. We have to change the way that we think about approaching our clients. And as sales operations, as sales leaders, it's our responsibility to help that change happen within our organizations. So let's talk about the new sales motions. What do those new sales motions look like? The first of those motions is targeting the buying committee. So it's no longer targeting the one executive and whining and dining them and taking them for golf. It used to work. I actually blame the dot-com bust of the late 90s is the reason why this all went to hell, but we can talk about that at a different time. The second one is really understanding. So it's not asking a bunch of questions, but it's having a perspective and understanding before you go in of where that person or where those individuals are in their buying cycle or in their discovery cycle or in their business. I think everyone here could agree it would be much nicer to have someone come in with an understanding and a perspective than to come in and just say, tell me about your business. It just doesn't work. And then last but not least, engaging. And we talk about engagement, it's no longer pounding someone to get that first meeting. It's how you create a strong relationship from that first contact throughout the sales cycle to get to contract. And which is why we're all here, to get to contract and to get to contract easily. So let's first start with targeting the full buying committee. So if you think about account-based sellers, I manage a team of account managers selling to enterprise accounts like LinkedIn, 14,000 people. A lot of my reps may have 10, 20 accounts in their book. So 14,000 people in the account, 10 accounts like mine in their book, that's 140,000 people that they've got to start to work their way through to try to figure out who that buying committee might be. That is a daunting task for any sales professional. Now the good news is that there's a lot of solutions now. There's a lot of opportunity for us to figure out who those individuals are. We've got the networks. You've got the world's largest social network with Facebook. Billions of individuals. You've got the world's largest professional network, LinkedIn, just crossed 500 million members. You've got the world's largest presidential megaphone, Twitter. Again, millions and millions of members. And all of these members are not only on these platforms, but they're sharing information, ideas, learnings, following people. And they're doing this in a way that we as modern salespeople need to take advantage of. And we need to be able to do this because we want to move from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. We want to move from those 140,000 people across 10 accounts that are 14,000 each, down to that small little buying committee, the small group of individuals who are going to be the ones that we want to target. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is I'm going to talk to you about the 10 essential tools that you should be thinking about investing in to help your reps take advantage of this plethora of data and the plethora of insights that are out there today. So we're going to start with the 3 account mapping tools. Fairly straightforward. Sales filters have been around forever. We're still using them. Sales filters is the idea of providing information to the sales reps at a very, very straightforward level. I need to find out how many people are at this company in this location, maybe in sales. But once we start to do that, once we start to look at individuals and we start to identify those that we would find important, there's new technology now to help the sales rep do that more efficiently and more effectively and accelerate that process. And that's lead bots. And lead bots are the whole idea that hey, I'm looking as a sales professional at CIOs, or I'm looking at VPs of networking, or I'm looking at the facilities manager. And now these lead bots can start to make recommendations for me on who else might fit that profile, either within my company that I'm searching into right now, or in all of my territories. And then once I've started to put this whole list of the decision makers, the right decision makers together, now I need tools to help me understand their social proximity. Did they come from a customer? Do they know other people within my organization? Have they had experiences with my type of solution before so that I can then decide my strategy for moving forward? So what do some of these look like? So let me start with a couple of examples here. The two on the left are from LinkedIn Sales Solutions. We've got some basic filters. Tell us we can go down to the zip code of the types of people we're looking for. In the middle, you'll see that did a search on a marketing professional. And based on that search, or maybe past searches or other searches I've done or preferences I've set up, at the top, the solution's now providing me additional individuals that I might want to look at. So it's accelerating that process for me now to put my accounts together. Twitter has a very, very similar system where based on the people you follow and the content they share, they will also suggest other people you should follow. And this is how you start to build out who inside of these account-based targets of yours you want to go after. So then you can move on to the next step of the process. So Andrew Taylor does this very, very well. Known Andrew for a while. He specifically looks for individuals who move from one company to another company. This is his social proximity about individuals who've had experiences with his company in the past or that he has connections with. I have another example. A friend of mine runs one of the large sales organizations at Tableau. Just the other day, he was sharing with me that they closed, if not the largest, one of the largest first ever lands at a company where the head of technology left one of their customers, went to the next customer, and as the guy was putting his account plan together, he said, wait, this guy's coming from Marsh McLennan or wherever it was. They called him up. They figured out the buying committee and they had a deal done. Their land was in the multi-millions. So just an example how you figure out that social proximity so you understand how you might want to engage. So now the understand before you ask piece. So as you've gone through this process, you've got your accounts, you've mapped them out with your lead filters, your lead bots, you understand the social proximity, and now you're ready to start engaging. And this is where it gets really fun. It's understanding before you ask. And the reason that you want to understand before you ask is because you've got this committee now, you believe, and if you burn a bridge with someone in that committee, you might actually take yourself out of the entire process. If you're over aggressive, if you go in and you prove you don't understand their business and you meet with one of them and they go, well, this guy's not worth it, he's not bringing any insights. I've met with them, I've seen their technology, let's move on. You've missed the opportunity. So what you want to start looking for is you want to start looking for within that committee social signals. And when you can find the social signals from a company that overlap with your buying committee, you're in that sweet spot. You're in that sweet spot where you're going to be able to now engage. So let me talk about what that sweet spot looks like and what the social signals look like. We've boiled this down into the 5 major social signals that you can look for on these major networks. They're fairly straightforward. Job changes. Job changes are a big one. Usually when someone changes a job, they're let go. So they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, and that organization's looking for a change. And on the flip side, if they're hired somewhere, they're coming in to make a change or institute a change. So it's a great opportunity to engage. Second, the hiring burst. Organizations hiring more and more sales operations people. They might be getting ready to implement more systems to help the sales organization expand. Would be a perfect opportunity for Apttus to come in. Hey, so you guys are growing. More processes. You're going to have to scale with your sales organization. This is a great opportunity. Let's talk. The new connections. If individuals in the function you care about are growing their network, and I'll share a story in a second, it's actually a great sign that they might be searching. They might be searching for information, and they might be searching for opportunities to learn more. Posts. People are posting about things they care about. They might be posting about problems they have, or they might be posting about things that they're solving for. I'm continually posting around sales leadership. How do we do it better? So if you come to me and you say, hey, I read a great post from you, Steve, about how you are helping your sales organization grow, I've got a solution that you might be interested in. I am more likely to engage with you. If my post is specifically around retention, think about how your solution might help me with retention. And then lastly, the whole idea of social comments. In social comments, you can actually start to tell if people are naysayers, challengers. You can start to get a disposition about how people are just by how they're reacting to their social network. And that could be a cue for you or for your sales reps on how they want to engage with that individual. So let me show you what some of these look like. In this situation, we've got actually 2 cues that I'm looking at, the job changes. So this is another picture of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. There are a lot of different ways to find this information. But in this situation, you'll see we've got 20 leads that have been saved. So I've gone out, I've done my research around this account. I've recognized 20 people that I think are going to be in the buying process. And now I'm monitoring. Now I'm looking for those social signals. Of those 20 people, you'll see 4 have changed jobs. And 2 have recently posted on LinkedIn. Sweet spot. I've just found the sweet spot in what I think is my buying committee. John Sears, very interesting individual, highly connected in the CRM world. He does a lot of work around CRM, helping organizations roll it out, track it, measure it. Throughout his career, he's connected with Salesforce reps, Microsoft reps, and he will sit and monitor these reps to see where they're building up connections. If you've got a Microsoft CRM rep and a Salesforce CRM rep both connecting very quickly to a single organization, there's a highly likelihood that there's a CRM project going on. And it might be an opportunity for him to engage. And he can use this as one of his social signals. Rick Van Gren works at Click, one of the sales analytics companies. He does something very similar. He uses those job changes in significant events like M&A to drive his engagement inside that sweet spot. So we've mapped this out. We figured out we've got a social signal that we want to work on. So now it's how do we engage? So let's talk about this final piece, which is engaging from the first contact to the final contract. So we like to think, especially at LinkedIn, around kind of relationships as a chain. Each one of us has chains that extend from ourselves out to everyone. It goes back to the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. What does that chain look like between you and these individuals on the buying committee? If you're lucky, you've got a direct connection. You've worked with them in the past, either as a customer or you've worked together at the same company. But most likely, you've got someone who's in between, an individual, a mutual acquaintance. And it's how do we build that bridge from the sales professional, this account-based seller, to that mutual acquaintance, to the customer. And there are a lot of technologies that will allow you to do this. LinkedIn is obviously one of them. Inside View has got some capabilities around this. There's some that will scour your email and it'll look for relationships where other people may have emailed. So someone in your IT department has emailed the person you're trying to get to. It'd be great to turn that up. So opportunities to figure out who is it that might know the individual I'm trying to get to. But it's not good enough once you've got that introduction and you've gotten that engagement. It's not good enough at that point to say, okay, I'm done. In my Cisco example, you saw it right away. I got the meeting. I sent a really nice follow-up. But what I didn't get was I didn't get the feedback loop. I didn't get the mechanism to know that I had missed the spot and my relationship no longer mattered. And that is important throughout the cycle. So whether it's that initial reach or when you're sending out contracts, you need feedback. You need feedback that you are still engaged and you're still providing value to your customers. And so these are the last two pieces of the puzzle. The connection paths and the feedback loops. And I'm so glad you're wearing headphones now that the band is kicked up. Hopefully you can't even hear that. So let's talk about a couple of these tools. I mentioned connection paths. Inside View does this really well. There's some other tools, Outlook, IO, and a few others that will help you understand the connections that you have to others within an organization. Use these connections. Buyers are 87% more likely to engage with you if you are using a warm connection. Second, feedback loops. Feedback loops. So the feedback loops are systems that let you know that people are engaged. Yesware, ToutApp, Marketo, we've got a little picture of Marketo up here. These are helping sales reps know that people are engaging with their communications so that they're making a difference. No longer having to say, just checking in. So Jeff Andrews, he's an example of someone who puts all of these pieces together. You'll see that he finds his prospects in his top accounts. He then goes through the social signals. Found someone who had an opinion, had a post. He didn't go in asking questions, he went in with a perspective. He went in, shared an insight, which then allowed him to ask some more questions, which then got him a meeting to the decision maker. He completed that chain. Another example, Michelle Johnson. Exact same thing. She will go through almost every day, 2 to 3 hours of looking for those social signals within her buying committees so that she can react to them and then use them to open a dialogue. So good news, bad news. Last year, LinkedIn sponsored a study. A little over 1,000 sales professionals across APAC, Europe, as well as North America. And the first thing we did with this study of these reps is we tried to ascertain who were the top reps. So we went through a very comprehensive way of digging out who were the top 10%, top 15%, who were the ones who go to club. And once we figured out the ones who would go to club, we then dug a little bit deeper to understand what are the behaviors that they do. And those behaviors are what drove this presentation today. 90% of those top performers use 2 or more of these methods in every one of their sales processes. So this is a way by which we know that the top reps are using this. What's the bad news? The bad news is that while your reps are in there, some of your reps are in here doing this, a majority aren't. And in every deal, there's usually 5 competitors. There are 5 competitors in there, and most of the time you only know about one of them. This is another study that we did where we looked at B2B deals that were lost. And then we went back in and we actually talked to the decision-making team, and then we talked to the reps, and we actually found out that the reps did not know there was many competitors in there, and they were doing these same skills and same behaviors. If I actually go back to my Cisco example again, I lost that deal 2 months later. I lost it to a senior level manager. Not the rep, but the actual person who made the decision on my competitor was a senior level manager in an adjacent business line where I wasn't playing because I was so interested in talking to the SVP of Worldwide Learning and Development. We also have to think about this for our account managers. Our account managers are very, very good at developing a single relationship and holding on to it, while the competitors are armed with their hunting tools and doing the exact same thing. So now your question becomes, and I'm going to wrap this up very, very quickly. The question becomes, what do you do to help alleviate this problem? How do we get rid of, or at least shift from this conventional methodology of just going high, bombarding these individuals with messages, and we do get those meetings, overwhelming them with questions instead of delivering insights? It's 3 simple things. I think you need to look at the tools. And I mentioned a bunch of them today in each one of these buckets. You need to look at tools that are going to help you think about, how am I going to build out my accounts? How am I going to monitor these social signals once I've identified who the buying committee might be? And then lastly, once I've identified those social signals, how am I going to engage? How am I going to make it easier for the reps to engage with these individuals? Once you've found those tools, it's not good enough to just roll them out. I get this all the time. I've got customers who buy Sales Navigator, which is one of our solutions, and they roll it out, and they're like, go use it. Reps will usually figure out one way to use it. Usually it's to go find people. But they don't understand, and they're not trained on the social signal piece. They're not trained how to look for those buying signals that allow them to deliver an insight. They're not trained on what are the insights they should be delivering, which is the key point. And then I think last but not least, measure. Measure how the deal cycles shrink. We have a little saying inside of LinkedIn around Moneyball. Highlight those people who are doing it well and are closing more deals, bigger ASPs, figuring out the decision makers, engaging more quickly, staying engaged with their customers, and closing the contract. That's all I have to share today. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.